What's up, guys? Elijah Scheidler here, owner and supervising broker of Venue Real Estate, and welcome back to episode 3 of the V3 Summit podcast. Now, I've been nailing an episode every 2-week average right now. Not sure if this is going to continue, but I've got grace for this pace in my race right now. If this is your first episode, welcome on into my sonic home and make yourself comfortable. This is a place for you to belong. Not just to be welcome in the process, but to belong within it. Now, my goal isn't to have people engage these podcasts, get views, and build a following to stroke my ego. I'm investing the resource of my life into these episodes with the goal of you being built up, refreshed, and encouraged in your person, and better equipped to engage life with more hope and passion. To help illustrate this, I want to engage a thought exercise with you. Close your eyes unless you're driving or doing something that you need your eyes to see for. But close your eyes and focus your mind on this thought. And it's gonna take some effort. Here we go. The sound of my voice that's writing comprehension of what I'm saying in your brain right now is the invisible substance of my person's reasoning being bonded with your person. Isn't that crazy? Keep your eyes closed and focus your mind on this space. What you're hearing right now is my person touching your person through the extension of sound waves locked in a video, waiting for you to engage and consume. My person is literally touching your person in the invisible, unseen space of your mind. One last exercise with your eyes closed. Take the index finger of your dominant hand and tap the end of your nose. Now, you can open your eyes now if you like, but your engagement with this exercise is demonstrating the degree to which you invited my personal touch into your life. Your closed eyes and tapping your nose are evidence that my person touched yours. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any reason for you to close your eyes and tap your nose. Isn't that crazy? Now, if you didn't close your eyes and are thinking, no, I'm not doing that, then you had less reception of allowing my person to touch yours. But my person is still touching yours because you're understanding the words that I'm saying, but you're resisting allowing me a place to belong in your person. My person and your person are still touching, but you're wrestling with my thoughts rather than accepting them. Now, remember, you're sitting in my sonic living room as a welcome guest, and my intention is creating a space for you to belong by focusing my attention on you with this podcast. Now, what your engagement with this first course of auditory hors d'oeuvres is stirring up in you is whether you're allowing yourself to know and to be known in a place of vulnerable belonging. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this exercise down in the comments below. What did you experience? How did this thought exercise affect your perception of how you're engaging with what I'm saying, with what you're hearing? Now, here's the deal. Even if you didn't take anything off the tray of communication that I just carried to you here in this podcast, you didn't engage the exercise. I've engaged with it with you as I made this video, and I'm aware of serving you to have a place of belonging within my thoughts towards you. Now, this exercise creates an opportunity for you to experience the very heart and essence of my podcast. I just touched your life with my own. I like to think of fingerprints as a topographical map that's the calling card of identity that we leave in the lives of others. And on a topographical map, that little swirl that's in the middle of your fingerprint would represent a peak or a summit. And its orientation within your fingerprint means that it's unique to your person. You're the only person with your unique set of fingerprints, and they point to the specific gifts and talents linked to the resource of your person. So I believe that every person has a summit, an area of peak performance that's unique to them alone, and that we each have the privilege then to release this resource into the lives of others around us and cause them to thrive within the momentum of their life. The area of my peak performance is purposed to help elevate you in yours. And the way that I accomplish this is by touching your life with the resource of my own life. Now, right now, your person is being touched by the extension of this media-aided relationship. My thoughts are being written into your brain via the touch point of my voice. I've left the calling card of my identity in your life. My fingerprints are at the scene of your climb in an elevated perspective. You tethered your attention to my intention and allowed me to belay you as you climbed the route that I built for you in your mind. Now, here's the thing. The majority of the people that I come into contact with, they don't live with this kind of approach to their self-perception and awareness to its connection with those around them, which is okay. I think that's part of the peak performance of my life, my unique identity that I get to gift to other people. In episode 1, which I'll link here in this video so that you can watch it if you like, I introduced the term emotional Sherpa. If you're not familiar with what a Sherpa is, they're people who live in the Himalayan region and are famed for their skill in mountaineering. They live at altitude and they run up and down the mountains of that region since childhood. So not only do they have the strength and endurance, but they also have the familiarity with the region and know it like the back of their hand. So experts come in to climb in that area, and they've got gadgets and apps that can predict storms, but that locals know how the storm front interacts specifically with the mountain. And not many have the drive to climb Mount Everest, but there's an entire community of people that engage it as the majestic chunk of rock in their backyard. I'm an emotional Sherpa. And I've built a lot of endurance and perseverance within running up and down very treacherous trails filled with life-threatening trials. Like I said in episode 1, I run up and down uncomfortable, awkward social subjects in my life all the time on a day-by-day basis. But before you trust someone, though, to help guide you in your own climb, it's good to know about their experience. Read their testimonials. And relationally, this is called a testimony. Now, my process in self-discovery and celebration has involved some deep life trauma. And as a result, it's helped me to realize that whether or not you're aware of the fact that you're affecting the world around you, it doesn't preclude the fact that you do. The only difference is whether or not we're intentional or unintentional within the touch point of our personal interaction. So we all have the same amount of time here on the earth, the time allotted to us. And to utilize it then with the personal agency that we have to affect changes in the world around us. And so my questions to myself are you investing your time for a multiplied return? Are you spending your time on consumables? Are you wasting your time seeing the value of your person lost, or are you serving others? These are happening whether I'm aware of them or not, or intentional in them or not. A quote that I encountered on a friend's Instagram wall said, "We all must suffer one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret." So we can't escape pain. We can only pick what pain we want to engage, and then attempting to escape our personal responsibility within pain only increases it and then hands it off to others, minus the ability to process it. So, great example in my life, how I've learned this is back in the early 2000s, I was attending college at MSU Billings as a music student. I was pursuing a BA in piano performance, and as I got started out my freshman year, I was touring around the campus and discovered the weight room while I was walking around as a new student. I grew up on a ranch, so I was always farm boy strong, but I certainly wasn't sculpted by any means. But I remember I walked up to the dumbbell rack and I picked up two 20-pound weights and I curled them. And it was super easy. So I sat them down, I moved over and I picked up the 30-pound weights. And it was also pretty easy. So I set them down, moved over, and repeat all the way down until I finally picked up the 60-pound weights. Now, I was swinging my body super hard, horrible form, but I curled them pretty easily a number of times, and thus began my process of weightlifting. I hit 6 feet tall by the time I was 12. If you haven't met me in person, I'm 6'7", and I'd been made fun of a lot because of my body type. I remember one person looked at a picture of me and said that I looked like a starvation victim out of a war documentary. Super not helpful for my junior high self. Now, in my process of lifting, though, I found out that I had a pretty high growth ceiling for building muscle, and I started putting on some heavy bulk pretty rapidly. So I was lifting heavily, I was sculpting my body, and performing in weekly music recitals on campus. So as a result, I started to gain attention as a strong, sensitive guy, and it felt super good to be noticed and appreciated by those surrounding me in my community. What I didn't realize through this process is that my identity was being built into what I did, and that many of the wounds that I had in who I was were being medicated by attention and reputation. So one day, I remember after a super heavy lift, I wound up tearing my rotator cuff while being young and dumb. And then a couple weeks after that, I tore my back trying to do rows on a Smith machine. So that threw off my training cycle for weightlifting. But it wasn't such a big deal at that point because it gave me more time to practice for my upcoming junior piano recital. Long story short, during the finale of my recital, I had a neurological disorder that manifested that ultimately stripped me of my ability to play at a performance level. So within a 3-month period, I wound up losing the 2 pillars of the things that I loved most in the world, that I had built my identity on. I didn't know it at the time, but I was clinically depressed, and it spiraled into a place of a plan for me to kill myself. I was in deep emotional pain as a result of my loss, and I was grieving, but I wasn't engaging it in a healthy way. As I considered living the rest of my life, I couldn't imagine living with the constant pain of the loss of my identity, and I didn't ever see it going away because it was defined by what I did, and I couldn't do those things anymore. So it was a logical thought. So as a result, my primary value in life became escape the pain. So drugs and alcohol would only deaden the pain and hold it at bay. So suicide became my primary consideration. I had a plan, and I was working up the courage to execute it by executing myself. But one of the primary things that held me up was thinking about what it would do to my mom. There was no possible way that I could figure out how to help my mom process my decision, because I wouldn't be there to engage her and gift her my ability to respond to her questions, to process the pain that I would have caused in her life by my decision. Fortunately, ultimately, by God's grace, I didn't kill myself, but years later, this experience came back to me, and I realized that suicide is a vision for a person's life that is executed to separate themselves from pain, that then disempowers others to be able to have personal responsibility within it to understand. Think about it. What was my vision for thinking about killing myself? My primary life value was to escape pain. That was my vision, and my means was by killing myself. However, as a direct result of me executing my vision, hear what I just said there, as a direct result of me executing my vision, it would have permanently separated me from gifting those in my life the insight, the sight into how to respond within my personal vision, right? Are you tracking? I know it's a bit of a complex and unpleasant thought to engage. If you want to engage it again, hit the back button a couple of times till you resonate with it. It's super key to engaging the rest of the thoughts in the podcast. Due to my pain associated with losing who I was, defined by what I did, it was blinding me from seeing that whether I wasted my life, I spent my life, or invested my life, I was having an inescapable, permanent impact on the people around me that only I could have. And I'm so glad that I didn't make this ultimate choice in executing my vision, but I'm so challenged by the fact that I kill my vision in small, often unseen ways every day by closing my eyes to distance myself from the discomfort of being affected by others. I don't want to engage the pain of digging deep to serve my kids, making a bid for my attention after a long day at work. So I stare at my phone. I don't want to engage the pain of my neighbor. So I make sure to stare straight ahead while I pull into my car into my garage and pretend I don't see him while I close the garage door. I build a business that makes a ton of money to be able to have a cushy life, but I don't consider the needs of my employees and my community. When my supreme vision in life becomes separating myself from experiencing pain, I execute my vision to being able to see what another person is asking me to see. Question: did you engage the thought exercise that I invited you into at the beginning of the podcast in order to be able to see what I was saying? Or did you say, no, thanks. I don't know what to expect. It might be weird and uncomfortable, so I'm not doing that. Now, if you heard what I said and didn't engage in the invitation, do you see how you cut yourself off from me and executed your vision from being able to feel the impact of another person on your own? Here's where I'm going to pull off the trail of this thought. Call for a break in our climb together, pressing into some difficult things, and talk about my personal failures. I often pat myself on the back, and I feel proud to have come through the challenge of having faced suicide and survived. But then I fail to realize that I pat myself and others on the back for looking the other way from gifting our vision, our insight into the painful life circumstances of others to help empower their responsibility to process their pain. That's so wild to me. It always challenges me. Every time I do that, I went through it, but then I look away. So as you consider this, let's go back to climbing. So as you consider this, you're beginning to realize that my initial thought exercise wasn't just a silly passing thought exercise that you could overlook without consequences. See, that's why I inserted the peak performance of my particular gift set and talents into the exercise to elevate your insight into seeing your peak performance and how it interrelates with others. I don't believe that people overlook connection with others because they're mean or malicious. Not at all. Like with my thought exercise, again, intentionally set up with the thought exercise at the beginning of the podcast, I think people skip over these interactions because they think it's not important or it's inconsequential, but it wasn't. It's the same way with your life and its touch point in the lives of others. You are having an impact, whether you intend to or not. The fingerprints of your life are showing up at the scene of their climb, helping belay them and helping keep them safe as they climb, or your fingerprints are absent at the scene of the climb, causing pain and helping feed people rope to harm themselves. This is where I learned my life's lesson in this. It's staring death in the face and trying to decide why I shouldn't execute my vision to escape pain. Now, if you stop and consider, all of us started out in life tethered to another person, being belayed in our climb towards the summit of our peak performance in life. But then we have to work to remember this the rest of our lives after our umbilical cord is cut. You can look at your stomach and see the evidence of how your life was tethered to, dependent upon another person to thrive and survive. My mom's labor to birth my unique fingerprints into the world as she gifted me belonging within life. The gift of belonging, an integrated connection within her being to elevate the momentum in my personal thriving, left the calling card of her identity in my life through her fingerprints, grasping the last thread of hope for me to hold on to it. Now, I was aware that I was connected to my mom. I knew who I was, where I had come from, whose I was, that I had an impact upon them, that I belonged, was valued, and that if I cut myself off from them, it would cause irreparable pain, and therefore held on to the hope of a life that could be better than the present, and that we had the resources to make it a reality. Suicide is a vision for one's life that funds a pathway out of pain and suffering, and the cost incurred is left in the hands of people incapable of understanding the vision. It destroys belonging, connection, and the freedom of personal responsibility. Now, what I've discovered through these experiences, again, running up and down these mountains like an emotional Sherpa, is that there are many people who live out what they think to be a valid vision for their life that accomplishes the same thing. It's socially acceptable suicide in which people have a vision that buys their way out of suffering, and in so doing leaves the pain of the sacrifice in the hands of people who can't understand and belong within the vision. Any vision established within a value for escaping pain is a self-terminating system. As I said in my last episode, Jesus is the most powerful leader that I've ever encountered. His person and leadership style is the antithesis of this, while giving us the perfectly empathetic understanding in our longing to escape pain and suffering. That dude sweat blood over becoming willing to pressing into laying his life down to serve others sacrificially. And then when there wasn't a place for him to lay his life down within my situation, he carried the instrument of his execution to the hill that he was to die on, is so that it could be set up, that he could be placed on it and lay his life down there while forgiving people in the midst of horrible pain and suffering. The only time that Jesus looked down on someone was when they tried to pin him dead to his rights on the cross. And in that position of looking down on them, he forgave them and poured his life out. Absolutely crazy. The guy was not enslaved. He was not pinned down. He was free even in that position. Freedom isn't the license to do whatever we want. It's the unrestricted privilege of being able to steward the resource of your life in service to others. I love how Jesus' leadership demonstrates this perfectly. What the integrity of his life demonstrates is that while leaders have the power to dictate that their interests be served, life-giving authority, the ability to author life and write a story of thriving into the lives of others, life-giving authority lays down their right to be served, to be pleased and outside of pain, and instead serves others by finding a way to climb into the pain, problems, or places of heartache in others' lives. The life principle is that we engage the climb into others' elevated perspective by descending in humility to serve rather than being served. Jesus didn't execute his vision to escape pain. Instead, he charted a course directly into my pain by laying his life down in order to empower me to be able to see with his vision and to have a place of belonging within it. That's what it means to be an emotional Sherpa, someone who's very familiar with suffering and pain and hasn't disengaged from it. They've lived at altitude, as it were, and become very accustomed to how the storms of life interact with the summits of people's peak performance. These summits in our lives present some of the greatest joys and greatest sorrows that we'll ever experience. There's lots of Bozemanites who are wrestling with losing a sense of identity because what has defined our identity is fading. It's proof positive that it's never going to come back because we can't ever have that again. The what is fading. And this is where people then wrestle with how they can go on living here because it's hard for them to imagine waking up every day with the pain of being reminded that what has defined our community's identity for so long will never be the same. With some, this is a low-level ache. And for others, the pain is so intense that they detach emotionally and they cut themselves off from doing the hard work of digging into who Bozeman is as a community. Or they just pack up and move away to escape the pain and discomfort. For those who are integrating into the Bozeman community, they can wrestle with a sense of being left with the cost of others' vision of escaping pain without any way of processing their ability to respond within it. So Brene Brown says that guilt is the awareness of having done something wrong. Shame is the awareness of being something wrong. It is the difference between having caused a problem or being a problem. People moving to our area are no more a problem than my kids are in having been added to me and my wife's relationship. Granted, my kids introduced me to my selfishness and lack of clear cultural values for our family, but they aren't a problem. They're helping invite me into a more clear understanding of who I am as a life-giving authority who helps to serve others sacrificially to promote them in the momentum of their life's purpose. And the people moving into our area are releasing the exact same benefit to us here in the Bozeman area. Whenever I run into people that I knew from college, but haven't seen them for a number of years, one of the very first things that they'll often say to me is, "Dang, dude, you are so tiny." I had one guy walk back and forth, like squeezing my arms, saying, "Frick, dude," with other words, "your arms are so small," while telling my wife, this guy was a freaking monster in college. Dude, what happened to you? As an emotional Sherpa, I can feel the shift in air temperature. I can see the clouds on the horizon begin to boil and know what kind of storm is blowing in to engage with the summit of my life's peak performance. I can't say that these kind of comments are ever not unpleasant or difficult to engage. However, what I know is that I've become very familiar with the topography of my identity that supports the summit of my fingerprints touch point in the lives of others. I've gained a lot of life experience in how the storms of life interact with these areas of our peak performance and how to weather the storm without abandoning the climb. That's why I'm being so bold to throw on my pack and start hiking into the backcountry of these difficult areas of thoughts and feelings here in the Bozeman community. People who may not have visited Bozeman for years show up and say the reverse of what I experienced. "Dang, this place is huge. This place used to be so freaking tiny and intimate when I was here for college. What happened?" People who live here and have been here for generations, they feel that hit. I've seen pictures included in listing packets of properties listed just off of Ferguson when they were being built that show nothing but open fields beyond the backyard. That's what people who lived here for generations, that's what they remember. And what it has been is being lost. Bozeman's reputation is dying as what it has been. It's fading, but its character, its identity, it's not affected by the change. It's just like I had to watch as my body shrank in size, as I couldn't do heavy 2-a-day lifts anymore. and people would make comments. Just like I had to experience my musical expression slowly diminishing with the lack of consistent daily practice. And as I experienced my community shift and change as people who interacted with me for what I did and not for who I was drifted out of my life, so also Bozeman is watching as community grows in size and makes specific elements of culture impossible to practice anymore. We're seeing things that made our hearts sing diminish in our ability to express them in their full beauty as we're not able to practice them as often anymore. And then people who are engaging the reputation of what Bozeman has been are drifting out of community connection as those things are lost. Reputation, like we looked at in last week's episode, is what people think is true about you. Character is the reality of integrity embodied in action. And what I can affirm with joy at this stage in my life is that my confidence in my identity, my growing courage in character, and the courageous compulsion to want to serve others has never been stronger. I'm still lifting weights. I'm still building muscles. I have a crazy high growth ceiling, but the weights that I lift are the burdens of myself and others. I can truly say with a free heart, I'm grateful for my life's experiences. Persevering through the trials of life tested my focus and perspective in life and called out a mature desire to serve others with the more complete vision of who I am. I love sharing in the joy of the journey together with others. Trials are trails traveled to summits of success. And sometimes we're tested not to show our weaknesses and failures, but to reveal our strengths. Elite athletes, they willingly participate in time trials to show the world their superior strength. Bozeman, we're in the middle of a trying season as a community and are discovering anew the superior strength of our character. We're Bozeman strong. We're lifting weights. We're Bozeman strong. Thanks for watching, friends. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to share time together with you here in my Sonic living room. So glad that you stopped by. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next video.